Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to REID Between the Lines. 2014, it's already done, but what a year it was for sports fans. This week, it's an all RBTL panel as the boys come back, and we're talking heroes, zeros, pretenders, contenders, and some of the biggest storylines that made the news in 2014. Also, on This Week, I face off against Stéphane Petry, the very polarizing MMA promoter. It's happening right here, right now. You know what time it is. It's time to read between the lines. This week's Four Downs is brought to you by Elite Sports Tours as we recap the year that was 2014. We invite you, as always, to join us on our social networks to have your say and share your opinion. We welcome an all RBTL panel. The boys are back for the very first time. Great to see you, David Hurley, RBTL contributor.
Glad to be back.
To your right is Pierre Evans Juste. Good to see you.
Glad to be back.
And to my left, our soccer insider, RBTL contributor, Anthony Cornelli.
New chair, new year.
All right, 2014, you talk about a new year. Last year was quite the year. A lot of ups, and downs. But you take a look at some of the most outstanding, dominant performances that teams have had. It's been a crazy year for dominance. Any one in particular stand out for you?
Oh, Super Bowl last year, when you look at the Denver Broncos getting beat by the Seattle Seahawks 43-8. Peyton Manning having a hard time in New York like that. That was a great performance. It shows all-around defense, and it really, really was a great team performance.
And you've been pretty hard on Peyton Manning with regards to the big games. So
yeah.
Is that one of the reasons why you went with that?
Well, no, it's actually just the way that they did the whole playoff run. I mean, the fact they beat San Francisco at home the way they did, and then to go and beat Denver the way that they did in New York, that was incredible, and it was really a total team performance.
Can they do it again real quick,
I
2015?
hope that they do. Yeah, I think they will.
Pierre?
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced about that. For me, it was the San Antonio Spurs, a team that suffered the kind of defeat they did the year before. Coming back, guys are older, so you're wondering if they're on their last legs. And coming into the series, people expected Miami to beat them again, and to go through that series and dominate them by a record margin in terms of point differential, in terms of scoring. For me, it was the most. Not only the most important performance of the year, but it was the most memorable because of the guys there. 5th championship for Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan and Tony Parker.
They beat the Heat too was
and
great.
they beat them down and basically got LeBron to move back to Cleveland. And for me, that was probably the most memorable.
There's no doubt that Greg Popovich has this team aspect going on. It's incredible to see how the Spurs buy into it. I mean, they truly are a team.
Yeah, they're the best organization in sports.
Exactly. They're not a team of superstars, more of a superstar team. You see that all the time. You use that expression. I use that quite often, but that team really represented. Can they go all the way again this year, do you think, 2015?
Yeah, I believe they can. They have the personnel to do so. Guys just have to be healthy.
About a year older, though.
Yeah, they're a year older, but Kawhi Leonard,
Conference.
MVP last year in the playoffs, he's a year older with more experience. And Tim Duncan is still at the top of his game, and Tony Parker is still at the top of his game. Manu Ginobili, they have the possibilities to do it.
Anthony?
Before I start, I'm going to go with the old saying, a game of football is 90 minutes, and in the end, the Germans always win. Germans became the first.
I'd like to know who that comes from.
It's an old
German
an old British saying, actually, but the first European team to win a World Cup on that side of the outside of the board, South America, North America. They went in Brazil. They dismantled Brazil in the semifinal 7-1. That brought 200 million Brazilians to tears. Maybe a few suicides. We don't know. And they went through France and Messi's Argentina in the final. So any team that beats France, Brazil, and Argentina on the way to a World Cup final deserves it. They had 5 players on the All-11 team. Neuer won Golden Gloves. Mueller, silver ball, was runner-up to the Golden Shoot. And they just dominated the tournaments. Boring, controlled, robotic soccer.
That 7-1 beatdown in the semifinal.
That was unprecedented.
Unbelievable.
They were dominant.
I don't think any team can ever manhandle Brazil like that if it wasn't for the Germans to do that. And I don't think we'll ever see a game like that again, let alone
I mean, it was
Brazil.
over in 20 minutes. It was 5-0 in 20 minutes.
That was
incredible.
fantastic. I celebrated every goal like it was a World Cup for me. And, I'm Italian.
And I bet you weren't the only one in the
times.
country that did that.
I'm going to go with the LA Kings. Seeing what they did in the playoffs was unbelievable. 26 games played in the postseason, 6 elimination games, even doing it against Chicago in Game 7, courtesy of Martinez. A great performance once again by the LA Kings. And again, being able to showcase that they can go the distance, that they love under with being under the pressure, and 2 out of 3 for a market that really needed it. They were the laughing stock for the organization for the NHL for many years. Finally, they're back to their winning ways. It's great to see them. It was unbelievable. Down 3-0, come back to win the series 4-3.
Chicago as well. That was basically the final.
Stay with us after the break, gentlemen. I want to change gears a little bit. I want to talk to you guys a little about your individual performer of the year. I know we didn't have a chance to touch on it, but we will. And we're also going to talk about your heroes and zeros. Stay with us, all that and more, all right here on Read Between the Lines. Welcome back to Read Between the Lines as we continue our recap of the year 2014, the year that was an incredible season for sports. We welcome back an all RBTL panel, David Hurley, Pierre Juste, and Anthony Cornelli. Great to see you, gentlemen. All right, we talked about, right before break, the most outstanding team performance. Any individual performances stood out to you?
Cristiano Ronaldo. Already in this calendar year, he's got over 30 goals in 25 games. He's doubled anybody under him right now in the Liga. Last year, he finished as UEFA Player of the Year, Liga top scorer, Champions League top scorer. He ran away with a Ballon d'Or, becoming one of the players to win Ballon d'Or with 2 different teams, Man U and Real. As a team, Real Madrid won everything across the board. There's no better player than Cristiano Ronaldo in 2014.
For me, I'm going into Anthony's area of expertise. I'm going Tim Howard.
That's because you have the same beard.
Yeah, we look alike. I could pass for him. Making 16 saves in a round of 16 against Belgium. That was huge. Most saves since 1966. Literally, he kept the U.S. in the game, and for me, that was the most memorable single game performance of the year.
Well, my memorable performance will have to go to a guy who played for the Montreal Canadiens, who was non-existent during the regular season, and René Bourque. Coming out the way he did in the playoffs was fantastic. He came out, he started scoring goals where we were all on our butts in the stands, freaking out, thinking, how is he doing this since he's only scored 6 goals in the regular season? It was a great performance. He helped Montreal Canadiens to an Eastern Conference game.
I'm going to go with Madison Bumgarner. Not only the best performance of the year, but the best performance a pitcher's ever had in the history of baseball. 0.25 ERA in his career with regards to the World Series. He pitched 52.2 innings. Unbelievable performance by Madison Bumgarner. And when you consider he's got 3 rings, and he's 25 years old.
And he had 3 World Series
and he's just getting
wins.
started. So it's unbelievable. We talked about, obviously, these guys being heroes, but there was a couple of zeros throughout the year as well. Anybody stand out for the worst performance or maybe the zero of the year for you?
Zero of the year for me is definitely going to be Jose Mourinho, and this is why I'm saying this.
Wow, that's on the box.
He came into Chelsea and he was supposed to win the Premiership. He missed out on that one, and he was supposed to win in the UEFA Championship, and he didn't win there. So Jose Mourinho has failed for Ibrahimovic, and I think he'll fail again in 2015.
You agree with that, Anthony?
It's tough to agree with that because I don't want to create a lot of haters. I've already done that when I hated on Messi. But
real quick,
like Dave said, to go up against PSG, Mourinho might put all his eggs in one basket and come out with nothing this year.
Do you have a zero in soccer as well, or?
I'm going with Brazil. Hosting the World Cup, promising to 200 million people with all the economic crisis. There was protests in Brazil. They didn't want to host the World Cup. Brazil went in and lost 7-1 to Germany. They got off to a start against Croatia where they got that questionable penalty, and they didn't perform. That samba Jogo Bonito wasn't there. Zero.
For me, it's not that he was ever a hero, but for me, it's Donald Sterling. The shadow that he cast over the NBA really, it put a damp on the playoffs. And they were a great playoffs last year. For me, he was definitely a guy that had to be removed, and that definitely it could have been much worse. Obviously, he got removed very fast, but for me, he was definitely the zero of the year.
I got to go with Tiger Woods. Tough year for Tiger Woods.
Leave Tiger alone, man.
Not that he was ever a zero, right? I still consider him a great impact player with regards to golf, and obviously, absolutely the greatest ever. But this specific year, if we look back at 2014, it was a tough year for Tiger Woods. He had his worst finish in an Open ever, missing cuts, he's not doing well, and I think that this whole situation with Tiger Woods has impacted him a lot more than we think, that we'd like to think, psychologically big time. And we're now starting to see the long-term aspect. Everybody kind of brushed it off and says, Tiger will be back, Tiger will be back. Now you get to understand how competitive golf is. Now you get to understand how competitive it is for guys like Tiger to repeat. But at the same time, the flip side of that is it creates an incredible look back at what he's been able to accomplish now that you see how hard it is for him to win.
Exactly.
So gentlemen, stay right there because I want to look forward to the year 2015 as we talk about our pretenders or contenders. You don't want to miss that. Stay right there. All that more happening right here. You know what it is. It's Read Between the Lines. Welcome back to Read Between the Lines as we look forward to the year 2015, a huge year in sports for us fans, and we invite you, as always, to give us your opinion, share your thoughts, and tweet us. Welcome back on RBTL full panel this week with David Hurley, Pierre Juste, and Anthony Cornelli. Gentlemen, I will start with my pretender and contender. I will start with a contender, and that would be the Toronto Raptors. I think the Raptors have shown through the course of a little bit more than a quarter of the season that they have not only the depth, but they have the guys off the bench who can get it done. The Eastern Conference, the nucleus of a lot of these teams are not the same. I think they've got a nucleus that's tight. I think coaching is doing well. I think that the vibe in Toronto is well. The fans are engaged on it. On the flip side, my pretender would be the Golden State Warriors, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of flack.
Yeah.
The idea behind the Golden State Warriors is there's no doubt that they've had a historic start in their season, and they're a deep team and potential an MVP candidate on that team as well.
Yeah.
The question is, with a stacked Western Conference and with the grind of a long playoff run, can they sustain that? They're a young team. They're an inexperienced team. I think this year is all about learning. Next year, they'll be the big threat.
That's a good one.
I'm going with my contender. I got to make a couple of my old friends happy with this. I'm going with my old guard, Juventus, in 2015. With a couple of big signings in the transfer market, I think we got a favorable draw in the Champions League with Borussia, that they're struggling in the German league. If we can get through Borussia and pick up maybe the winner of Basel, Porto, we got a semifinal in the Champions League. We're going to run away with our 4th title in a row in Italy, and we got a favorable draw in the Coppa Italia. So hopefully we'll be the first team to put a silver star for a 10th Coppa Italia and have our 3 stars for our 32 championships.
I love how you say we.
I'm part of it. I'm black and white. My pretender, I'm have to go with Mr. Falcao of Manchester United. I think when he didn't get to go to Real Madrid, he's a little baby, signed for the 2nd biggest team in world football. He's coming into his own, but he'll be out of Man U in a couple of years, and people are going to say, you know what, he should have stayed in Monaco.
We'll take him for a couple of years. Don't worry about that.
Pierre.
For myself, my contender and my pretender are the same person. For me, it's Adonis Stevenson. It was a no-brainer. A lot of talk in the last couple of weeks, especially leading up to the fight, and he did great. Knocked out a guy that he was supposed to knock out. It was a mere formality. But as a champion, it's very seldom in boxing history that the guy that's looked at as the champion, the lineal champion, is not recognized as such by the masses. And for Adonis Stevenson, it's the only reason why is he hasn't fought the best guys in his division. Now he does have a prime opportunity to fight either the winner of Pascal Kovalev, and he not only does he have to fight that guy, but he has to look great, because it's a make it or break it year. He's closer to 40 than he is to 30, and he has to deliver.
Well, I'm going to go with my contender of the year. My contender of the year is going to be David De Gea. What he's done at Manchester United is being the youngest goalkeeper, and he's going to be one of the world's best. He's going to beat Neuer as being the best goaltender in the world, I think, in the next year. I think 2015 will be a big year for Manchester United. They'll have to climb back into the top 4, get back into the Champions League. So we'll see some nice things. And my pretender of the year goes to a man who shafted the Oakland Raiders in Jim Harbaugh. Have fun in Michigan. You're not going to win. You're going to have a hard time in the Big Ten. You're going to lose to Urban Meyer in Ohio State year in, year out, like the tradition goes for Michigan. So thank you for shafting Oakland, but enjoy yourself in Michigan. You're not going to win.
Frustrated Raiders fan.
That was going to say.
I'm a Raiders fan. I'm a little bit bitter, but he's leaving the pro ranks to go to college. It's going to see it's not the same.
Real quickly before we go to break, is there a reason or a understatement of why this has happened? I know that you claim maybe
why
that
did he go back? It's his alma mater. He played there. He brought his team to a number 2 ranking when he was with Bo Schembechler.
Personal attachment.
Wow, it's a long name to say. But yeah, it's his alma mater, and then he wants to go back and he wants to revive that program and bring it into one of the top in the nation.
On that note, gentlemen, it was great to see you. Look forward to a great 2015. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks.
Stay with us after the break. My one-on-one, my face-off against the very polarizing Stéphane Petry. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Adonis Stevenson. You're watching Read Between the Lines.
He's known as one of the most successful MMA promoters that Quebec has ever seen. He's outspoken, and he's the ex-manager of GSP. It's great to be able to face off against the one and only Stéphane Petry. Stéphane, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking the time.
It's a pleasure.
You're a very polarizing figure. A lot of people like you, a lot of people don't like you because of the success that you've seen in MMA. I was curious to start with the pending lawsuit that's happening in the UFC. Kung Lee, his manager, his lawyer has come out and said, look, we don't like the conditions in which we're working in. First of all, do you agree with the lawsuit? And is it a very fine line that these guys are crossing right now with regards to the lawsuit in the UFC?
I think guys should be careful with this whole lawsuit thing. I think the UFC's done a lot of good things for the fighters in the last few years. Well, since they bought the company, they spent a lot of money in the fighters. They spent a lot of money marketing-wise to get the sports known.
But in all fairness, in terms of return of sports, right? If you take a look at the 4 professional sports, the amount of return of the amount of money the organization makes back to its athletes is averaging about 50% in pro sports. In the MMA world, I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8%. Do the fighters have a point here to ask for more money?
Oh, exactly. At that point, at the point we are in history right now, I think fighters should be making more money, obviously. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's not a situation where, if you compare it to boxing, I mean, Mayweather makes a lot of money, all those top guys make money, but all the other guys fighting on the undercard...
So it's top heavy.
Exactly. All the undercards fighters are making stupid money in boxing.
Right.
In MMA, a guy will start with the UFC will make at least $10,000 for his fights. Mm-hmm. So obviously there needs to be a balance where the top guys make more money. But I think we have to read between the lines. We have to be careful.
I like it.
We have to be very careful with this whole situation. I think the UFC's done a tremendous job.
Yeah.
I think some of the fighters can make more money, but I don't think it's a situation like some media are reporting that the UFC is exaggerating on fighters. It's not at that point, but yes, you're right. At the beginning, they spent a lot of money on the sport. I think at one point UFC was 400 million under. Now they're making a lot of money, and obviously fighters should get more, but it's not as dramatic as people say.
You work on both sides from a promoting standpoint. You were also an agent. Real quickly, where does the responsibility lie of working conditions? Is it all on the promoter? Is it all on the president of the company? Or is it also on the agent, on the fighters to say, this is what we want to fight. This is what we're going to ask for to fight. But at the end of the day, the control also resolves in the promoter's hand as well. So where does that responsibility lie? I'll
give you the best example. I'm managing fighters in the UFC right now, but they're beginning in the UFC. Mm-hmm. They're not a top star yet with the organization. Mm-hmm. So the agent can do much. It's you try to get the best deal for your fighter. You try to negotiate little things, but there's not much you can do because if you're not going to go in the UFC, where are you going to go?
Right.
But when you're managing a guy like GSP, back when I was managing GSP, I got George's first $1 million contract. And that was a very, very hard negotiations with the UFC. Mm-hmm. I mean, we went back and forth. We hung up on each other a few times. Me, Dana, and Joe Silva, it was crazy. But at the end of the day, I got George back then a great deal. Yeah. So when you have leverage, then it's on the agent's shoulder to make sure his guy gets the best deal. And Kung Lee was a top guy. I mean, I think maybe his agent didn't do a good job if he's not happy.
You've been a central focus and central pivotal pioneer, really, when you think about MMA in Quebec. I'm curious to understand, with all this hype that boxing has right now in Quebec, you've got so many stars who are coming out of Quebec in terms of boxing. Is Quebec an MMA market more than a boxing market? It's just it's been untapped? Because there were a couple of years back when you were running a couple of the organizations that you were involved with, it was seeing some huge success. I mean, TKO was drawing a few thousand, if not more, at the Bell Center, in which I was involved with back in the day. I remember that very clearly. Is it a boxing market or MMA market?
I think it's not a boxing market and it's not an MMA market. I think Montreal is an event market. If you bring in Montreal a big event, a big fight, a big names on a card, whether it's MMA or boxing, you're going to get people. Back in the days with TKO, we were getting 8,000-9,000 people.
Yeah.
I remember one night we took a former hockey enforcer, Steve Bosse, we put him against Icho Arenas, who was a champion here, and we got 9,000 people.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a question of the sport. It's mostly a question of who's fighting on the card. And the big problem with MMA right now in Quebec is that before you get champions like they have in boxing, I mean, you need to build a Boutte, you need to build a Stevenson or a Pascal and all these guys.
As well.
So here in Montreal, a guy will, after 4 or 5 fights, will want to go into the UFC. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine back in the days with TKO if I would have said no to the UFC and kept Saint-Pierre, Hominick, Stout, Loiseau, and all these guys there? I mean, we would be the one getting 20,000 people at the Bell Center under the TKO or whatever banner. So it's going to be very hard for MMA in Quebec, because by the time you build a star and you're able let's say you're able somehow to keep him in Montreal. The problem is also that you have MMA on TV every 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
You have the UFC reality show.
Fight night.
You have a UFC every weekend. You have Bellator once a week. I mean, it's crazy. Back in the days, there was no MMA on TV. There was, TKO. We had when there was a TKO event at the Bell Center, it was something special. Now it's not special anymore. It's on TV 3 times a week. After I stopped with TKO, took a break for about 2 years, I came back with Instinct. We had a great first show. We had 5,000 people, but we spent a lot of money on marketing and advertising. Sometimes we overspent on that, but it was the first show. We wanted to get the name out there. And then after that, when we came back to normal marketing budgets, we went down from 5,000 people to 1,000 people.
Right before we let you go, I want to have a little bit of fun with you as we get into our rapid fire segment. I'll throw a couple of questions your way. You let me know the first thing that comes to mind. You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. So which 2 fighters in their prime at a catch weight would you have liked to see fight?
Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre.
Is the UFC monopoly good for MMA worldwide?
No.
Will CM Punk make any splash in the UFC?
He's going to get squashed.
If there was one rule that you'd like removed or implemented, which one would it be?
No rounds.
How many seconds do I last against you in the octagon?
2 minutes.
Will GSP come back?
You will for one fight.
And last but not least, pick one athlete from either today or the past that you would want to sit down with, have a nice supper with.
Vitor Belfort.
Pleasure doing this, and thanks for taking the time.
It was a pleasure.
Hopefully we'll have you back.
Thank you.
Stay with us. My rant is up next. You don't want to miss it. With a new year now upon us, we'd like to take a moment to look back at the year that was 2014. This past year in sports saw many great moments as well as plenty more forgettable ones. In early February, what many thought will be a matchup for the ages turned out to be a heavily one-sided affair as the NFC champion Seattle Seahawks dominated the favored Denver Broncos in the 48th edition of the Super Bowl, taking the big game by a score of 43-8. Amid fears of terrorist attacks and protests against Russia's anti-gay propaganda, the Winter Olympics took place in Sochi. Despite all the controversy surrounding the event, nothing could slow down the Canadian men's hockey team, who dominated their opponents easily, winning the gold medal. Brazil hosted the World Cup with high hopes of winning it all. The entire nation then watched as their home team suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of the eventual champions from Germany. And who can forget the play of the Los Angeles Kings in the 2014 Stanley Cup playoffs? Not only did they come back from a 3-game deficit against the San Jose Sharks, they also won 2 other 7-game series before beating the New York Rangers to win the Stanley Cup. For all the great moments, 2014 was not lacking in controversy, especially in the NFL. After video emerged of Ray Rice knocking his then-fiancée out cold, the issue of domestic violence took center stage. The situation got worse when future Hall of Fame running back Adrian Peterson was accused of physically abusing his 4-year-old son. Just as forgettable was former Los Angeles Clippers owner Donald Sterling's blatant racist remarks, which were made public and promptly forced him to sell his team and received a lifetime ban from the NBA. The St. Louis Rams made a statement as 6 of their players came out of the dressing room with their hands raised up in the air as homage to Mike Brown, who was unarmed and is said to have his hands raised in surrender when he was shot and killed by police. Through all the good and all the bad, 2014 had no shortage of stories in the world of sports. We saw enormous victories as well as crushing defeats. We saw athletes rise to greatness and some fall from grace. All in all, it was a special year, one we will not soon forget. Here's to a new year, one that will hopefully be as unforgettable as the last. For everyone here, we'd like to wish you a great 2015, and as always, we ask you to read between the lines.
Adam Reid's wardrobe by Carp.ca. Salon services courtesy of Glam Atelier, La Maison de Beauté. Guest accommodations provided by Holiday Inn Express and Suites. Catering services by Piatto Rustico, available at piattorustico.com.